Okay, welcome to mini lecture 3 in module 3. Again, we're still dealing with the physical environment. Again, very brief lecture. We're going to be talking about hydrography, that is the water characteristics of the natural environment in the region. Now, hydrography in the Americas is dominated by a couple of major features, and then what I want to talk briefly about are two of the human environment interactions that are becoming very important. So first of all, big three: the Mississippi River Basin, the Amazon Basin, and then the Great Lakes region. It is important to note, though, we're also going to be talking a little bit about the Panama Canal and something that was in the news just today, which is the Gulf Dead Zone. And I do want to at least point those things out for you. Okay, now, first of all, I'm going to start with that last point, which is the Gulf Dead Zone. The Gulf Dead Zone is a region of the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Louisiana, extending through Texas all the way over to the Florida Panhandle, where as a result of eutrophication and influx of sediment and nutrients from this massive basin that is the Mississippi drainage, we see the Gulf of Mexico actually become what we call hypoxic. And that means that it is starved of oxygen, and organisms that live in that area have a very difficult time surviving these periods of extremely low oxygen. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, predicted that this year's dead zone would be one of the largest ever recorded. That's a problem, but what it also implies is that this idea of the hydrography, and you can see in this image how big the drainage is that influence that Gulf of Mexico. And what you will also notice, all these areas in pink are those areas that are urban centers along those major waterways. The areas in bright green are the areas of heavy agricultural use. And so this dead zone is a connection between the natural hydrography and the impacts of human beings. Okay. Next, let's take a look at these hydrographic regions. So when we look at hydrography in the Americas, a couple things that I want to point out. The easy ones, you'll notice again the Mississippi River drainage essentially occupies all of the middle of North America and drains areas as far north as Canada all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. It is important to note, though, along the Hudson Bay, there are some drainages in Canada that actually are north draining. Now, contrast that with the Amazon Basin. These are the two large basins that contribute to much of the water that moves from the inland in both of these continents to the coasts, one in the Gulf of Mexico, one into the Atlantic Ocean. The other part of this that I did want to focus on, and sometimes those of you that live in this area don't appreciate the magnitude of the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes, through the St. Lawrence and their interconnections, provide a second resource in terms of water and in terms of water navigation. Much of the ore, the heavy resources that move out of the eastern part of the United States are in fact moved on the Great Lakes still. So those are the big hydrographic regions. And the other one that I want to talk about is actually quite a small feature, but incredibly important. If you look at the Americas, and in fact if you look at it from a global scale, I'm going to actually zoom way out here, what you're going to notice is that the Americas form an incredible barrier to movement from the Atlantic to the Pacific. You either have to go all the way around the African, the Horn, and into South and Southeast Asia, or you have to go all the way around here. And so that was always a problem in terms of naval or marine navigation until the brilliant idea of finding one of the narrower spots and simply cutting a canal across the Isthmus of Panama. Now, that's an amazing concept to simply say we are going to physically alter the hydrography of the world. We're literally going to connect two oceans by our activity. So in terms of hydrography, we think about that. That's one of those that we did actively. When we think about the hypoxic zone or the dead zone in the Gulf, we certainly did not mean to do that. When we look at these two features, we think about how humans interact with their environment, and in some cases very in a positive way, at least in terms of our economies. in other ways very negatively in terms of their impacts on the environment. Okay, that's it for hydrography. We'll finish this portion with our lecture on climate.